Hello, my name is Sydney. And in today's video, I'm going to delve into some ideas to make the most of your time before applying. My advice is solely based on my experience and tailored more towards those who are anticipating or unexpectedly taking 2 gap years. In my next video, since I talk a lot, I'll be specifically sharing what I did during my first gap year. First off, I am overwhelmed by the amount of sweet, supportive comments from you guys ever since starting my Instagram. Last week was the first time I ever internalized that I was talking to someone besides my camera, so
hey, how you doing? What's up?
my door is always metaphorically open if you guys ever want to connect or ask any questions. As always, timestamps of each specific section will be included in the description below. Okay. Let's begin. What is a gap year? A gap year is time, specifically an academic year that you take off before attending medical school. They are becoming more and more common as it's getting more and more difficult to get into medical school. The process of applying can take up to 16 months, and that involves completing all your prerequisite courses, taking the MCAT, submitting your primary and secondary applications, sending in all of your letter of recommendations, taking the CASPER exam, as well as traveling to and completing all of your interviews. As an example timeline, if you do not want to take a gap year, which means that you would start medical school right after you graduate, you would have to apply at the end of your junior year. For 1 gap year, you would apply at the end of your senior year. For 2 gap years, which is what I did, I applied to medical school a year after I graduated college. Pros and cons. Starting with the cons, I would say gap years are a con if you are going into the gap year without a particular plan or purpose. As some bullet points, I've heard this a lot in the Asian parental realm. There is a possibility to lose academic motivation since you are taking yourself out of the academic rigor environment. By taking a gap year, you also open up the possibility for complacency under the false guise of having more time. So let's say you decide pretty early on in your college career that you want to take multiple gap years. In thinking that you have all this time after you graduate, you might not push as hard as you would have. When you're in college, you are in the heart of opportunity and connections. You have student orgs who filter you into the hospital systems, or if your school is affiliated with a hospital system. If you're taking your gap years not in your college town, you really have to forge your own opportunities, which will definitely take a lot to put yourself out there. Not to say it is impossible, but just to keep in mind, you also play with the risk of time. Hypothetically speaking, let's say you apply when you are done with your gap years. For some reason you do not have a successful cycle. That pushes timing back more. Let's say you use those gap years and you apply. If you're not pushing through your second gap year to build yourself up as an applicant, you would have to reconsider taking more time after already taking your gap years in order to differentiate yourself as a reapplicant. Lastly, this goes hand in hand with time. This was by far my biggest reservation, the concept of age. In retrospect, 1 year is not gonna hurt me, but I really used to think that my uterus was just not gonna hang. How do I say this without sounding weird, because it just made it sound really weird. Being a mom is really important to me, but some things that have helped calm my anxiousness about that is just understanding this is the process that I'm signing up for. There's a lot of women who successfully navigate through this process, and hopefully at that time when I can afford to, science will take care of me and I could freeze these little babies. Actually, yeah, literally speaking, these are little babies. But yeah. 1 year won't hurt. I will be turning 24 when I start medical school, which is the average age of matriculation, so calm down. Pros for taking a gap year. I'm a huge advocate since I reaped the most nectar from taking gap years. It gave me more time to become a stronger applicant. You get to enrich your experiences, such as passion projects that you always wanted to do but felt like you never had the time to in college, or experiencing those once-in-a-lifetime moments that you might struggle to incorporate when you do start your medical journey, such as traveling. There's also an opportunity to improve your academic standing since you have time to study, to take the MCAT, to boost your GPA through taking master's or post-bac. I don't want to say the whole word. Post-bachelorette? Post-bac. You can take a master's in post-bac. If you're heavily involved in research and you're on the cusp of finishing a project, then having more time can help you push publications. A gap year will also allow you to decompress and take care of yourself mentally. I know a lot of people towards the end of their college career do experience burnout. And like I mentioned earlier, the process of applying to medical school is a long, arduous process. By having a gap year where your main focus is mainly just work, you do have ample time to really pour your heart into your application. Gap year ideas. I'm going to list some key phrases of these ideas that are enumerated. This is kind of the framework I followed when I chose what to do and how to spend my time. I'm also going to look down for my laptop's sake. Number 1, align and pursue things that inspire you. This kind of boils down to focusing your narrative and just sharpening your why. In college, I was just more so chasing that checkbox rather than finding things that really resonated with me. When I started my gap year, I wanted to really hone in on what I enjoyed and identify why I enjoyed that. That will really translate to how much you pour yourself into that involvement. Not because it looks good, but because you truly care about that. My second tip or advice would be to document everything. Having myself publish something weekly really focused my efforts to advancing my writing skills, as well as just have this reservoir of experiences and moments that really grounded me to why I wanted to do medicine. My third tip would be to affiliate yourself with a medical school or a health system. That brings a lot of benefits to having direct experience, exposure, and familiarity. People who are directly in the health system, you never know how close their link is to the medical school of interest if that's the area that you want to go. If it isn't, no worries, because a lot of times a lot of these scientists or these doctors are collaborators. To have someone attest to the work that you did is power in terms of letter of recs or just learning from these people directly who are spearheading the efforts in this health system. So some ways you can have your foot in the door is by shadowing, becoming a hospital volunteer. Especially if there is a medical school, there most likely will be a free clinic. Let's say you're not in that health system city, there are some ways you could possibly find involvements where you can volunteer remotely. There's UCs throughout California, but all because I was limited to one city, I still found involvements in 2 different schools where I became a pen pal and I became a digital online health coach. My fourth tip, create a passion project. In undergrad, finding leadership can be difficult. So in this time, it allows you to be creative in forging ways where you can express or do that leadership by pursuing a passion project that you've always wanted to do. You find ways to get involved in the community, which I found was emphasized in every single secondary I completed. My fifth tip would be to experience the world. This falls under the umbrella of work, finances, interpersonal development, or seeking mentors that can really sharpen your grasp on what you want to do in the future. In terms of work experience, some common gap year jobs, let's say if you wanted to integrate clinical experience, a scribe, a medical assistant, a clinical research coordinator, a research tech, or a research associate. For non-clinical settings, but still in that healthcare sphere, I've seen a couple people do healthcare consulting. And during this time, it really is a crucial point of development where you understand how money works as well as how to prioritize and budget, which will be very helpful when you start medical school. Any money coming in will be helpful to mitigate all the money coming out later.
Strumming my pain with his fingers.
My sixth tip would be to develop a hard and soft skill. In terms of soft skill, constantly putting myself out there, I developed my ability to storytell, interact with people, and communicate, which is crucial not only in the future when you are a doctor, but even in the process of applying to be a doctor. When you are thrust in this working world, you meet a lot more personalities and working types outside that college science bubble that is more representative of what you would see on a day-to-day basis, whether that is in your colleagues or in your patients. As for hard skill, I would recommend hone a craft. Related or unrelated to medicine, any way to build and nurture yourself can always be applied to your profession. For example, if you wanted to delve into writing or study literature, this is the time for that. If you wanted to refine your skills as a scientist, as a researcher, then definitely do that. Or if you wanted to kind of venture into the entrepreneurial side of medicine, this is the time to become more accustomed and more familiar with that realm. There's also the tech side if you wanted to look into programming. I hope that made sense. I know nothing about technology, but you know what I mean. Lastly, this is something that I'm actively working on, study some foreign languages to be able to be more comfortable using that one day. My seventh tip, I'm not going to start this with an action verb. I can't miss this rhyming opportunity, but certification nation. get certified, basically. Now is the perfect time to specialize in skills that will be invaluable later. Foster the mindset of continual learning. Investing now will only make your training easier in the future. Some things to consider: depending on the job that you do, you will have to be BLS certified. This was really good clinical experience. I also got phlebotomy certified. You can also get X-ray certification as well as your medical assistant certification. You can also get your EMT certification. And lastly, my 8th tip would be to get creative. It is so important to find balance, pursue hobbies, and have outlets that make you happy. What are your de-stressors? What are the things that you always wanted to do but never really found the time for? For example, I tried bouldering, I tried acro yoga. And I didn't really like acro yoga, but I tried it. The thing that really stuck to me is dance. I used to do it when I was younger. I kind of gave it up when I started college because it's like, oh, there's no time. But now I have nothing but time. And lastly, I started this YouTube channel. Had I just applied last year, I don't know if I would have gotten in, but had I got in, I probably wouldn't have started this channel at all. I've always wanted a YouTube channel ever since I was 11. I would watch a lot of beauty tutorials, but I'm glad I'm doing it now because this channel really signifies all the things that I'm passionate about, all the people in my life, and all the different ways that I can help other people, because I've definitely struggled. I don't know, did that get deep? Careful, no diving in these waters. Or not really, you dive on right ahead because we getting deep. All right.
Strumming my pain with his fingers.
So that concludes everything I wanted to cover in today's video. If you found this helpful, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up, as well as consider subscribing. If you're curious how a gap year glowed up, stay tuned for the next video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.